friends. Welcome. And today we're going to be talking about boundaries and disappointment. And ultimately how we don't want to let our letdowns shut down our desires. And I also want to just acknowledge that this is a time of some great uncertainty. We've got a lot going on that feels unsettling and uncomfortable. And there are also ways that you can utilize your boundaries amidst all the fear that we might be in right now. So, one of the boundaries can be around the way that we're managing our mind and managing our thoughts. One of the boundaries might be around the way that we are intaking information. We might want to have a boundary around the way that we're interacting with the media, or if other people are bombarding us, we might want to set a boundary around what we're willing to take in. And we might also want to set boundaries about the way that we come into contact with each other. There's been much said about the elbow, bump as opposed to a handshake and a hug. So just know that if someone comes in for a hug and you're not comfortable with it, or someone comes in with a handshake and you're not comfortable with it, that's a boundary that you can set and that you can name and simply say, I'm not comfortable with that. How about we just touch elbows? And it might feel awkward and it might feel uncomfortable, but boundaries are all about knowing what is okay for you and being able to stand in your truth and expressing it. So just notice, as all of this information is coming in around coronavirus, what's happening inside of you, how much you're intaking of the news, how much of the media, how much is coming at you, and recognize that you can choose what to interact with or not. You can choose the way to engage your mind, and you can choose the way that you want to come into physical contact or not. And I just, we often forget that we have permission and that we have power around these things. But to me, these are the three most important things right now. You do have power over your own thoughts. You do have power over what you intake, and you do have power over the way that you physically interact. So I'm just wanting to remind you that in this time of heightened awareness and stress and unsettlingness, I'm not sure what the word is, feeling unsettled, just to remember that you are empowered to enforce the boundaries that feel right for you to keep you safe. All right, so I want to talk about boundaries and disappointment today. And I've sort of subtitled this little chat, don't let your letdowns shut down your desires. Because to me, there is a real correlation between boundaries and desire. And those of us who have been boundaryless, from our people pleasing, our peacekeeping, our conflict avoiding, our not wanting to rock the boat, we also tend to have similar qualities around feeling independent, self-sufficient, not wanting to have any needs. In fact, we reject our needs to such a degree that we really even pride ourselves on having no needs. And when we're that disconnected from our needs and our wants, we're also really disconnected from the depth of our own desire. And so what happens is when we are dealing with disappointment, we often are creating boundaries out of reaction. So we're creating boundaries out of reactivity and not out of the place of really being connected to our own limits. So that's the first piece, because we want to, and I'll just say again that our boundaries really are our limits. Our boundaries are the limits that we determine around what we will or will not do, will or will not tolerate, will or will not accept. Our boundaries are really at essence what's okay and what's not okay for us. And no one can determine our boundaries except for us. And all of the boundaries we have are ultimately with ourselves. So my boundaries are really between me and me, even if there's someone else involved. Your boundaries are really between you and you, unless even if there's someone else involved. Because the number one myth about boundaries is that someone else is crossing our boundaries. So as soon as you get that, as soon as you really grok that, we can move into responsibility and empowerment, knowing that we're the ones crossing our own boundaries, which means our boundaries are here and they're here for us to maintain and respect and honor and uphold. So we don't want to make them out of reactivity. We want to make them from a place of really considering ourselves. So we don't want to make them in reaction to someone else. The invitation here is really threefold. Am I willing to consider myself as much as I consider everyone else? So am I willing to consider myself really at least as much as I consider everyone else? Am I willing to consider myself more than I consider everyone else? And then really what I call the boundary ninja move is, am I willing to consider myself first? Am I willing to consider myself before I consider everyone else? So if I'm willing to consider what's okay for me, I'm setting the boundaries as they're, in a sense, they're preemptive, so that even if disappointment comes, I've already created for myself what works, what doesn't work, and what I'm going to do to take care of myself, so that I'm not in reaction to someone else. I'm not in reaction to someone else's behavior. One of the ways that we often cross our boundaries is really crossing that threshold between where I end and you begin, and we start going over the line into someone else's territory, wanting to manage their experience, wanting to manage their emotions, wanting to take responsibility for their experience. So we also want to pull the reins back and leave our responsibility over here on this side of the net. And when we're met with disappointment, what often happens is it gives us some signal that our desires aren't worthwhile, or our limits aren't okay, or our feelings aren't okay. We get this message, or we get even, I would say, even more of a message around the not enoughness we might already feel, the not good enough, not enough, that we're already experiencing. And we actually start to allow the disappointment to shut down our desire. So we get in this mode of, what's the point of wanting if I'm never going to be able to have? What's the point of wanting if I don't get what I want? And so what I'm going to invite you to do here is actually start learning how to practice wanting without connecting it to the how, without connecting it to the logistics, and simply see what begins to happen when you can connect to the wanting, connect to the desire, and remain open to the having, remain open to the receptivity, remain open to receiving. We get so hung up on this idea that there's no point in wanting because we're not going to get it anyway, that we actually shut down our desire. And the more we shut down our desire, the more resentment's going to build. And the more we take our attention off of ourselves and keep it on everyone else outside of us. So all of this is ultimately the invitation to be able to turn the spotlight that we've got on everybody else back on us, bring the attention back here to the only thing we have any control over, to the only thing that we are empowered to change. So the more we can stay home in ourselves, the more we can come in contact here, the better off we're going to be able to be. Now, one thing I really want you to hear is that this is not an either or. This is always a both and. So this doesn't mean that you are only putting your attention on yourself. It doesn't mean that you only take yourself into account. It simply means that you're willing to take yourself into account as much as, and then more than, and then before everybody else. Because if you are taking really good care of you, you are going to be able to be of better service to the people in your life who you care for. This is a really important piece. Most people hear this as, if I'm looking out for myself, it automatically means I'm not looking out for anyone else. If I'm considering myself, it automatically means I'm not considering anyone else. That is not what I'm saying. I'm just wanting you to take yourself into account also. Bring yourself into the conversation. Allow yourself to have what it is that you want, because right now there is a way that you are putting the block on your desire by already convincing yourself that what you want isn't available to you. But if you don't open yourself up to the receiving, you're never going to be able to have. So this is an important piece here. Just want to say a quick hi to all of you who are joining me. Hey, Janice. Hi, Rhonda and Teresa and Kimberly. Hi, Lynn in the UK, and Carol and Rhonda, and Marlene and Barbara Ann. I'm part of a family relationship where my choices are healthy for me, but feel unnatural because of the expectation of how this relationship should be. Right. So the should be is what you want to pay attention to. You get to live in alignment with your truth. You get to live in alignment with what's right for you. To me, freedom is living in your truth, expressing your truth without fear, and boundaries are the bridge to that freedom. Because while you may not get people on board with the way that you see the world or the way that you operate in the world, you're essentially giving them puzzle pieces to you, to your truth. You're giving them glimpses into your operating manual so that they can calibrate to you instead of you always needing to calibrate to them in order to make the relationship work. It's really important to understand the things you do in order to keep the peace or in order to try to make relationships work, and recognize that when we are doing whatever it takes to keep harmony at all costs, it comes at a really high cost to us. So if you are willing to stay in the discomfort of living in your healthy choices, even though there's an expectation from others to be doing something different, you are also modeling for the people around you about how to live in your healthy truth. And see if you can disconnect from needing to be understood and needing to be validated, and instead reconnect to your own inability to honor yourself. Hey, Reenie, honey. Hi, Dale in Edmonton. Hi, Louisa. Let's see. Hey, Chris. Hey, Carly in Seattle. Hi, Carol. You're very, very welcome. You're very, very welcome for this topic. You know, I started really thinking about this idea, don't let your letdowns shut down your desires, because we really have a way of feeling the defeat or getting disheartened, and we tend to go to this catastrophizing, to the awfulizing. We go all the way over to the pendulum swings all the way over into, what's impossible and how I'll never be able to have what I want. And so much, and I really want you to hear this, so much of fulfillment and satisfaction in our lives actually comes from opening ourselves up to having what we desire. So much more is available to us than we have been willing to open ourselves up to having. And that can feel a little scary, that can feel vulnerable, that can feel raw. But I'm here to tell you that when we are willing to open ourselves up to the havingness, to the great grand havingness, open ourselves up to the receptivity and the ability to receive, so much more comes our way. And all we need to do, and I'm saying this is simple, not easy, all we need to do is really give ourselves permission to have, because up until now, we have not done that. Up until now, we've shut it down. Barbara Ann, great. And Steph, you heard me on Hay House this morning. Awesome. Awesome. That's so cool. I love it. Good. So, if you tuned in a little late, I'm just going to reiterate that I opened this morning with just a reminder about boundaries that you can also set during this time of uncertainty and feeling unsettled and feeling fearful, perhaps, around what's happening with coronavirus. And there are 3 boundaries that I'm really going to encourage you to set in your life around this time. One is really being aware of the thoughts that you're thinking. You know, you actually can choose what you want to think. You can choose to move into love out of fear. You can choose to move into gratitude instead of fear. You can choose to move into empowerment instead of feeling disempowered. So really recognize the way that you are catastrophizing in your own thoughts and believing what your mind is making up. Just notice that you have control of your thoughts. The second piece around this is recognize that you have control around the media intake, around perhaps friends are sending you links to articles, perhaps friends or family are, all up in arms. Recognize that you have control over how much you are willing to intake. Boundaries are really about your own capacity. Know your capacity and enforce it. So you don't have to even go to the place. You can let people know, hey, I appreciate you sending me this, but I'm choosing not to reading any of this right now, or I'm only choosing to spend 10 minutes a day reading this, or whatever it might be for you. This is what's good for you. But also recognize that even if the onslaught is coming in, you don't have to read and respond to anything. You can do it in your own time in the way that feels good and safe for you. So just, again, recognize your thoughts, recognize your media intake, and are you doing it on your own terms or are you doing it on someone else's terms? And the other piece that feels really important right now is physical contact and gathering. Make choices based on what feels good to you. If it doesn't feel good to hug or shake a hand, simply let the other person know. Really pay attention to what feels okay for you and know that it is 100% most safe for you to honor your boundaries here. Let's see. You had Ashley on that repeat show. Oh, good. That was a good show. Great stuff. Hi, Jamie. Teresa, right. I don't close friendships. I don't chase friendships anymore either. I'm no longer willing to hand over my power to others. No more people pleasing today. And I find that people are weeding themselves out. I focus on who I am and who I want to be. Exactly. Because we always, I've said this many times and I'll say it again here. Real intimate connection, real true friendship to me is based on the foundation that there is room here for the truth of each of us. That it's not about me trying to get you over to my truth or you trying to get me over to your truth. That we can simply both be here with what's true for each of us. And that to me is the ultimate in real friendship. Let's see. Love the 3. Great, Patricia. I'm glad that's helpful. Carol, I've come so far since I did your jump coaching. I did jump and I'm holding those boundaries. I'm so happy to hear that. I'm thrilled to hear that. Yay. I'm so glad. So just a quick reminder for those of you here, if you are not already in my free Facebook group, I have a free Facebook group. I'd love you to join us, and I'm going to put this right into the chat here. You can join us at transformtogether.com. Oh, no, excuse me, transformtogether.us, not .com, transformtogether.us. So I popped it in there. Oh my God. See, I see CJ here. Chris, you're listening from the dining room on Chatham. I love that. I love that. Um, Free Facebook group, transformtogether.us. We've got a really beautiful, engaged, committed community where you can get great support. So I encourage you to join us there. And, the ebook of Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free is still $199. I don't have the link quick. And Rini, if you're here and if you are available to pop in the link and grab it, that would be awesome. But I don't have it in this moment. And I don't want to fumble around on Amazon. But you guys can even just go to Amazon. The ebook of, actually, I'll tell you, the ebook of Setting Boundaries Will Set You Free and the ebook of Permission to Put Yourself First. Both of those ebooks right now are only $199. So that is a killer deal. That's like for under $5, you can get 2 ebooks that can really support you in making yourself a priority in your life and setting boundaries that stick. So once we go off, I'll pop those into the comments so that anyone watching the replay, you can access those, because I think it's only through the end of March that both of those ebooks are still going to be $199. So it's a killer deal. Okay, awesome. So again, I appreciate you joining me here on Thursdays. We're going to keep it going and, stay healthy, stay strong, stay committed to what is most important to you. And remember that when you stay true to you, you are healthier, you are more resourced, you are more receptive in every area of your life. And that's what we need right now. We need you to be strong, healthy, resourced, and receptive so that you can give and receive in the natural cycle and the natural order of things. All right, my dears, I will look forward to seeing you here again next week.